Welcome to another edition of Bridget's podcast. Her guest today is her favorite political commentator, Charles Otterman. They will discuss a hot current event topic. Today's topic is driving all the headlines around the world. It is a topic that, tries as they might, they cannot make it go away. Join Charles and I today as we discuss the Epstein files.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We have a critically important and frankly deeply disturbing topic to discuss today. And joining me as always to shed light on these complex, often murky waters is the one and only Charles. Charles, it's always a pleasure, though I wish the circumstances were happier.
Bridget, thank you for having me. And you're right, this isn't a topic anyone takes lightly. It's one of those issues that just cuts to the core of what we believe about justice, power, and accountability in this country. And honestly, it's only gotten more convoluted, more obscured with time.
Absolutely. Today, we're diving deep into the Epstein files, a subject that has festered really, for far too long without adequate resolution. Charles, you've been following this saga from the very beginning, and you've spoken extensively about the alleged cover-up, particularly concerning the Trump administration and the Department of Justice. Can you set the stage for us? What are these files, and what's the history we need to understand?
Of course. So for those who might not be fully up to speed, Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted sex offender, a multimillionaire financier who for decades operated a vast and horrifying sex trafficking ring, preying on underage girls. The Epstein files broadly refer to the legal documents, testimonies, flight logs, and other evidence that detail his crimes and, crucially, the extensive network of powerful, wealthy, and politically connected individuals who are allegedly involved with him, either directly participating in his abuses, enabling them, or benefiting from the illicit activities. The history of these files is checkered, to say the least.
Checkered is an understatement, I think. We saw initial attempts to prosecute him, then a highly controversial plea deal that many viewed as a slap on the wrist, then his eventual rearrest, and of course his death in prison, which itself sparked countless questions and conspiracy theories. But your focus, Charles, has really been on what happened, or perhaps didn't happen, with these files during a specific period.
Precisely. When Trump came into office, there was this expectation for accountability, especially given his drain the swamp rhetoric. Yet what we witnessed, in my estimation and that of many others, was a concerted effort by elements within his administration and the Department of Justice to largely stonewall any meaningful public scrutiny of these files. There were individuals implicated, or at least mentioned in the periphery, who had connections, financial or otherwise, to powerful figures, some even within Trump's orbit. The fear, the very real concern, was that rather than exposing everyone, the priority became protecting certain individuals, certain reputations, essentially burying the truth deeper.
So instead of draining the swamp, it felt more like they were redirecting its flow, or perhaps even expanding it, just with different creatures, as you've often put it. It's that idea that Trump ran on this promise of dismantling the corrupt establishment. But what we got instead was a system where loyalty to him and his inner circle seemed to supersede justice, especially for the most vulnerable.
That's exactly it, Bridget. The okie dokie of draining the swamp, right? It was a masterful campaign slogan, tapping into a genuine public frustration with corruption and elite impunity. But when the rubber met the road, the swamp wasn't drained. It was, in many ways, reconfigured. What we saw regarding the Epstein files was an apparent disinterest, if not outright obstruction, in fully exposing the network of powerful men who either should be convicted of sex crimes or at the very least are guilty of severe immorality through guilt by association. Or, just as damning, were complicit in helping a convicted sex offender continue to traffic women and girls to wealthy, powerful men.
It's infuriating, truly. And when you look at Trump's own history and his public associations, it makes the alleged cover-up even more suspect. The files, to many, scream of another example of Trump's own alleged immoral behavior, or at least a tolerance for it, especially towards those who are helpless and vulnerable. It just seems to be a recurring theme, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Trump and Epstein were acquaintances, that much is public knowledge. They moved in similar circles. While direct evidence of Trump's involvement in Epstein's specific sex trafficking ring hasn't been conclusively proven or disclosed from the files to the public, the broader pattern of alleged behavior and associations raises serious questions. It reinforces this perception that for certain individuals, especially those with immense wealth and political power, the rules simply don't apply. The standard of conduct, the moral compass, seems to be entirely different. And when that lack of moral grounding is perceived at the highest levels of government, it corrodes public trust in everything.
That's the crux of it, isn't it? This notion that there's one set of justice for some people and an entirely different, much more lenient set for the rich and powerful for people like Donald Trump. It completely undermines the foundational principle of equality under the law.
Precisely. The scales of justice in this instance appear profoundly unbalanced. For the average person, a misstep, a minor infraction, can lead to devastating consequences. But for the elite, even allegations of grave offenses, like those surrounding the Epstein files, can be swept under the rug, or at least have their exposure deliberately delayed or diminished. It creates a system where the powerful feel untouchable and the vulnerable feel utterly abandoned by the institutions meant to protect them. And the alleged actions of the previous administration, in my view, exacerbated this perception rather than rectifying it.
And this brings us to another critical and often uncomfortable point you've raised, Charles. How does this connect with the segment of white nationalist Christians who seem to worship at the altar of Donald Trump? How do you reconcile their professed faith with what many see as a pattern of immoral behavior, especially concerning issues like the Epstein files and the protection of alleged predators?
It's a really difficult question, Bridget, but one we absolutely have to confront. From an outside perspective, and frankly from the perspective of many who genuinely strive to follow Christian teachings, the unwavering support for a figure like Donald Trump, particularly when confronted with allegations of gross immorality, sexual misconduct, and a seeming disregard for the vulnerable, becomes deeply paradoxical. Matthew chapter 25 is quite explicit, isn't it? Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Jesus' teachings are fundamentally about compassion, about protecting the weak, about justice for the oppressed.
It's about serving the least among us, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, visiting the imprisoned, not presumably protecting the powerful who allegedly exploit children.
Exactly. So when you have a significant number of individuals who identify as Christian, and particularly those aligning with a white nationalist political identity, prioritizing a political leader who is alleged to have connections to individuals like Epstein, or whose administration allegedly worked to obscure the truth of such matters, over the explicit moral injunctions of their faith to protect the vulnerable, it suggests a profound disconnect. It implies that for many, their Christianity in this context has become more of a political identity, a tribal marker, than a spiritual commitment to ethical living and social justice derived from the teachings of Jesus.
So they're not really following Jesus' teachings in Matthew chapter 25. They're following a political ideology that aligns with their personal or perceived group interests. It's a sobering thought.
It is, and it's a dangerous one for the soul of the nation, because when faith is co-opted for political power, it loses its moral authority. And when the moral authority of a large segment of the population is compromised in this way, it enables further injustice, like the very cover-up we're discussing with the Epstein files.
Which brings us to the crucial question: if we truly want real justice for the victims in the Epstein files, if we want to rip away the veil of secrecy and hold every single person accountable, what do we do? What's the path forward, Charles?
The path forward, in my view, is unequivocally political, and it requires direct action from the electorate. The previous administration and elements within the DOJ, for various reasons, failed to provide that full, transparent accountability. We need to elect individuals who are committed to it. That means, quite frankly, that if you want meaningful and truthful congressional oversight into those evil people who aided and abetted Jeffrey Epstein in his evil sex trafficking ring, we need to all vote for Democratic candidates for the House and Senate.
You're saying it's about electing a Congress that is willing to wield its power, its subpoena power, effectively and without partisan fear or favor to get to the bottom of this.
Exactly. Democratic majorities in both chambers would significantly increase the likelihood of committees having the subpoena power necessary to compel testimony, release documents, and conduct thorough investigations without the stonewalling tactics we've witnessed. They would be less beholden to protecting the same powerful interests that might have been implicated or connected to the previous administration. This isn't about partisan loyalty for its own sake. It's about electing a body that has demonstrated a willingness to pursue justice, even when it's uncomfortable, and to protect the vulnerable rather than the powerful.
It's about restoring integrity to our institutions and ensuring that powerful people aren't above the law. Because without that oversight, without that subpoena power, these files, this truth, could remain buried, and the victims will continue to be denied the justice they deserve.
Absolutely. It's about more than just the Epstein files, Bridget. It's about sending a clear message that this country still believes in justice, still believes in accountability, and still believes in protecting children and the vulnerable. It's about drawing a line in the sand and saying that certain behaviors, certain levels of corruption and complicity are unacceptable, no matter who you are or how much money or power you have. And the only way to genuinely achieve that, given the current political landscape and the history of this particular case, is to empower those who have shown a commitment to transparency and oversight.
Charles, your commentary, as always, is incredibly insightful and incredibly sobering. This is such a serious subject that touches on the very fabric of our society, and as you said, is truly destroying our body politic. We need to confront these truths, no matter how uncomfortable they are, and understand the real world implications of our choices, both electorally and morally.
Thank you, Bridget. It's imperative that we keep discussing this, keep pushing for answers, and keep holding power to account. The victims deserve nothing less, and our democracy demands it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charles, for once again bringing your wisdom and your critical perspective to our listeners. And to all of you listening, thank you for tuning into this vital conversation. Let's continue to seek the truth and advocate for justice wherever we can. We'll see you next.